Do you ever find yourself scrolling through Steam's front page, daydreaming about playing games you're not willing to pay while letting your overly abundant library to rot? Well, what if you could do that same thing but with free games? In fact, games that are usually bite-sized for you to play one boring afternoon. Well, my friend, let me introduce you to the wonderful land of itch.io. Now, I know what you're gonna say. That site is actually shit and all of its games are trash made by 10-year-olds. Typically, I would react with great violence to that statement. But not today. Today I am here to lecture you about the great things that you can find in this wonderful site if you just look right. These are 3 itch.io games that you should play. First one on the list is Retromine by CCDG. This is probably the game that I found myself replaying the most out of this entire website. Retromine is a deck building mining roguelike filled with risk and not much reward, to be fair, mostly just risk. In the game you have to make a deck of cards with different effects, most based around getting either ore or score. To win, you need to reach a score quota while getting the most amount of ore possible. You can later use that ore to buy more cards for future levels. So, to sum it up, it's basically Minecraft Balatro. The children yearn for the mines, and I yearn for gambling. This game is insanely hard. In fact, I actually haven't beaten it yet. Even so, the game easily hooks you in and leaves you wanting to try it again and again. Any slight error or bad hand can pretty much kill a run, so getting late into the game fills you with adrenaline harder than any card game I've seen. Seeing the chances of success getting lower and lower the further you go is as anxiety-inducing as it is utterly thrilling. I think the beauty of this game is in how simple the concept is. Every card and mechanic is way too simple, yet the more you play the more complex connections you make between them, but often in a fairly logical and comprehensive way. So that's pretty much it. You can download it or play it on browser with the link in the description. Even if you don't plan to replay the game, it's worth trying out at least once. The next game is Dead Plate by Studio Investigrave. Dead Plate is a narrative-driven horror game where you have to do something that I personally couldn't bear: getting a job. Wait, what? That's not the horror part? Oh no, not at all. The game has you working as a waiter, taking and serving orders to many customers. However, as the game progresses, you start to notice that there's something wrong with your job, and I'm not just talking about your boss's bitchy attitude. The gameplay in this game is really fun. It's simple, it's hard enough to stress you, but not too hard to struggle. The interesting part about this game isn't the gameplay though, it's the story. The narrative of this game is impeccable. Throughout most of the experience, the narrative is a secondary aspect, being pretty noticeable but lying beneath the gameplay. Nothing is properly shown until the ending, but there's always some aspect of the story present. Ranging from subtle foreshadowing to pretty blatant cutscenes, the base of the story is presented in a relatively implicit way, yet it all makes perfect sense at the end. The character building of this game is also remarkable. From the first moment you see a character, be it its appearance or first few lines, you get to know pretty much the entire personality. And trust me, these guys have a truckload of personality. Not only that, but they also get more and more complex as the game goes on, making genuinely some of the most memorable characters I have seen in an indie game. Before we move on with the video, I want to clarify that all I said about Dead Plate can also be said about every other game made by Studio Investigrave. My personal favorites are Elevator Hitch and Meridian Red. These two don't come close to Dead Plate when it comes to gameplay mechanics, but they make up for it by having some incredibly fun and well-designed puzzles, especially in Elevator Hitch. Meridian Red, while having some fewer gameplay aspects, has some very original ideas and is, in my opinion, the best one story-wise. Now, before we move on to the third and last game, I want to make some honorable mentions. Voices of the Void is an incredibly complex horror game where you run a laboratory in charge of detecting and processing radio signals from outer space. The ambience of this game is impeccable, absolutely flawless immersion, especially due to the complexity of its mechanics. Its only downside is that it can be a bit hard to learn what button does what, but it's still incredibly fun and a completely recommended experience. If I was smart enough to explain it, it probably would have been the third game of the list. Longhouse is an incremental tower defense where you have to manage a town, balancing production and defense aspects. It's a very fun and challenging experience that has great replayability since you can unlock permanent upgrades for your towers in between games. Do you ever spend hours in a Discord call with a friend because you don't know what to play? Just tell bro to hop on Mario vs Luigi. Yes, the DS game but ported to browser. Alright, maybe you don't like platformers. Just tell him to materialize in your house so you can play a game of My Rusty Submarine. Or perhaps Feudal Foes. Or any other local multiplayer game. This game is a reimagination of the original Plants vs Zombies. It adds a few plants and a bunch of game modes that don't alter the game all that much but totally add to the experience. Also, I'm in love with the remixes of songs and sprites it has. If you want a proper remake of this classic game, unlike whatever EA did, give this fun game a try. Ever wanted to play a Souls-like from the perspective of that one OP boss? No? Well, I was expecting you to say yes, that's what this game is about. Whatever, it's a really fun and unique short experience, so go try it out. Finally, horror games. In general. Really, if there's something truly magical about this site, it's the sheer amount of horror games there are. Of course, some are better than others, but still, I could make a whole separate video on each of your horror games. Nah, probably not. I don't have the patience to review like 200 games for a silly YouTube video. Now, for the last game I wanted to choose something longer. Not a game that you beat in one sitting or that uses the same gameplay over and over. I wanted a full-ass game, and for that I present to you Look Outside. Now, despite the fact that the game is incomplete, it still is incredibly enjoyable and a perfect mixture of RPG and horror aspects, so you should totally go play it. How innocent I was. Editing away my video, completely oblivious of the fact that Look Outside was actually not unfinished, and in fact, the full version was published on Steam! This can't be, it just can't. How can I recommend a game in a video about itch.io if the full game isn't even on the platform? With less than 2 weeks before I had to post this video, I had to find something and find it quickly. I started frantically looking for longer and better games on itch.io. Pumpkin Panic? Steam! Fumes? Steam! It's all Steam, it always has been! I was desperate. Was I just unable to finish this video? Were there really no good long games on this platform? I was beginning to lose hope. I decided to take a long walk, maybe that could help me relax. Down the street, through the neighborhood, and into that alley. And that's where I found it. This is perfect. No, not the stupid cat, the game! Do Not Take This Cat Home by Pixeliminal. Oh, yeah, right, we can get back to the video now. Sorry this took so long. Do Not Take This Cat Home is an innocent visual novel where you take care of a cutesy little cat that has in no way demonic tendencies. I don't know why the game is called that, I mean, why wouldn't you want to take such an adorable kitten home with you? Oh, okay, that's why. This game is entirely based on text and narrative, with very little gameplay aspects. The story constantly splits into different branches and paths, with 40 different endings. Every branch, however, is significantly different from the rest. Every ending has a unique charm to it, as they each have different tones, plots, and sometimes even gameplay aspects that make the game feel like a collection of short stories that all part from the same root, but have totally different narratives and outcomes. You can play the game once or twice for a nice short horror experience, or you can replay the game getting every other ending to get a true one. A masterful conclusion to the game where every path converges and becomes, and I know I say this a lot but bear with me, absolute cinema. Another great aspect of the game is its art style. I don't think it pops off as something that original, especially compared to the last game, but the illustrations in this game are really nice and effective at accompanying the story. Apart from being absolute eye candy, the art in this game really helps convey the mood of the moment. If the atmosphere is meant to be calm or quiet, the scene will be something appropriate. And if the scene is meant to be scary, well, let's just say the game can get a little graphic. Lastly, this game is one of my favorite examples of psychological horror. True psychological horror. Nowadays, it is common to see the psychological tag slapped onto any horror game. Very often a wrong categorization that's just there so that the game sounds more intricate or because the genre is popular. This game though is really psychological. Saying the writing is beautiful would be an understatement. It really knows how to get the words under your skin, making you feel everything. At times, the tension alone is enough to get you to fully shit your pants, and not to mention how it can get so gruesomely detailed to the point of almost feeling pain in real life. I replayed some endings to catch up with the game before writing this, and I swear, despite already knowing how each route ended, the tension still really struck. If you want a taste of true psychological horror, check this game out. And if I scared you off with this description, here's a list of trigger warnings. Play the game at your discretion. Now, with all 3 games introduced, I invite you to go try some out yourself. Even if you don't find any of those interesting, there's so many games in itch.io that it is statistically impossible not to find a game you love, or at the very least enjoy in this page. If there's any itch.io game you like and want to share with people, do leave them down in the comments. That's what this video is for after all. What I love the most about this page is how close you feel to the games you play. Games in itch.io have a certain personality. You can often see their thought process behind them, through their web page or through the game itself. You get clearly reminded that the game you're playing is likely a one-person creation, but not in a bad way. Most games in itch.io feel like art pieces made by someone not to sell the game, but for the sake of creating something they wanted to play, just for fun. That's what art is after all, and this really helps remind us that video games are another form of art. A form of art that can be done by anyone willing to, even without much technical knowledge. I hope you enjoyed this video and take it as an opportunity to reflect on the games you like, and maybe reach out to try something different in the future. Also, before we finish, it's probably worth noting that this video aged so poorly. I started working on it early 2025, but it's been in and out of my scope ever since. Now I finally got set to finish it, and god damn it, everything I talked about is so obsolete. Retromine released a whole remake with a lot more content that is soon gonna release on Steam. Studio Investigator released Jackpot Crash Course, a much better game than anything they've made before, and I would have loved to talk about it instead of Dead Blade. And well, at least I managed to catch on to Look Outside's release before editing that part of the video and change it into another game that hadn't betrayed itch.io. Oh, and I found so many other games worth being honorable mentions, but I won't add them because I don't want this already outdated video to spoil even more before it comes out. Oh well, the message of this video still stands. Kinda. Go play the first thing you find on itch.io. Now though, and without more games to rant about, thank you so much for watching, and as always, thanks for the views.